Hey everyone, Patrick here again with something very, very special. Um, this is a lightsaber that I have wanted for a very, very long time. And a while back I had the means to get it, so I got it. This is a Rowan's Props Static MK1. It's his Obi-Wan Episode 4 New Hope lightsaber. And whew, I'm happy to have this. Um, yeah, I'm really excited for this. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about Roman's props and how I came to find out about them and stuff like that. Um, so I heard about them a few years ago. It was after I joined the army and started really getting back into Star Wars again. I was heavily into Star Wars growing up when I was a kid, but as the hype for Star Wars kind of died down after Revenge of the Sith, um, I kind of fell out of it. You know, I was doing things in my own life. A lot of my old hobbies started to kind of fall to the wayside, and then somewhere down the line, and this was long before The Force Awakens came out, I came across the Clone Wars series. Um, just came across a video on YouTube and I said, oh, I'll check this out. And a buddy and I, we watched through the entire series, fell in love with it. And then I've been back into the Star Wars scene ever since. And around that time, I came across Roman's props. I heard of them when I came across Shamim's initial As First Built By review. So I checked out the site and stuff like that, thinking, cool, I'd like to own that. And at the time, the only lightsabers that Roman offered was this hilt, the static MK1. You could get it weathered, you could get it in its shiny chromed version, or you could just get it in its standard unfinished version. And that was it. That was all you could get. There's no FX ready ones. There's no Inception Elites or Balance V4s. Yeah, this was the only lightsaber-esque thing on his site. His site was incredibly hard to navigate. I don't even remember what else he used to sell at that point in time. I saw the price though, and I was like, nope, not gonna do it. Few years passed before I bought my first custom lightsaber, which ended up being Ultimate Works Down Dooku. Um, but a couple months ago, I came across Roman's Props site again. I started seeing videos on YouTube. I started following more and more saber channels, and I started seeing people posting his reviews of his Deception Elite, which is his Revenge of the Sith version. Personally, that style never appealed to me, but it made me go check the website out again. And I was shocked to see that he sells exclusively just lightsabers now. That caught me off guard. His site has done a complete revamp since the last time I checked it out. Um, and I thought, you know what? Because the saber was on sale for the New Year's sale, and that sale I think is still going on. Last I checked, but I saw that it was a little bit cheaper. I think the total with shipping was like $365. So you're not paying $500. I think it's like $559 or some $459. Sorry, $459 when it's not on sale, not including the shipping. So you're gonna pay well over $500 for this static hilt. The FX version is actually more expensive, I believe. I believe the FX ready one is more expensive. Personally, I wanted the static kit. I did not want to do an install on this. Something about hearing about how heavy it was, hearing how accurate it was, something about the static kit just appealed to me. And so I ordered it. And I received it and I love it. So I'm going to go over, starting from the pommel going up, I'm going to talk about the pieces you got to assemble yourself. And yeah, go from there. So let's start with the pommel section here. So this is, I believe, a British armistice sync knob. I think it's a sync knob that was popular during the 1960s and 70s. There's also an American version. Now this one is not stamped with a hot or cold on the base. We don't know what was used in the film. So I completely understand why Roman would leave that blank. And it should be noted that all these parts, not only are they replicated to be the exact scale and aesthetic look, but they're replicated down to the exact material. So if the original material is steel, this replica is steel. If it was iron, it's iron. If it's brass, it's brass. So it's awesome. So you have your D-ring there, and the D-ring you assemble yourself. It comes in the bag with the transistors and the bubble strip, and the D-ring you gotta assemble yourself. However, you can email Roman with your purchase and ask him to install it for you, and he's usually willing to do it. He was very willing to do it on mine. He accidentally made a mistake on mine and forgot to install it. I had made my order right as he took spring break and right around the time of his birthday. But his customer service is awesome. He emailed me after he shipped it and before I received it to tell me that he made a mistake and that he would pay for shipping both ways for me to send the sync knob back so he could install it himself. I figured out how to get it on there myself, so I didn't have to do that because I really didn't want to part with any piece of this once I got it. But yeah, his customer service is awesome. Getting to this black section here, this is a booster section from a World War II Browning machine gun, which is awesome. I really don't have too much to say about that. It's really heavy metal parts. You get to your Graflex clamp. Oh, the Graflex clamp. It says Graflex. It says Graflex. Come on, son, get out of the way. My first time ever owning a kit that had the Graflex stamping, and it's awesome. And you have your 2 transistors. Each one of these transistors comes with a washer. It's more accurate just to have the one, so that's what I have. But if you want to put both on, hey, more power to you. I just aesthetically like the look. And all these pieces are weathered. All of them have really nice weathering on them. And you have your bubble strip up here, which is the only plastic component in this entire hilt. I've actually elected to glue mine in there. I've glued my bubble strip down so it is not going anywhere. Since this is a static kit, this is a shelf queen, so I have no reason to take it apart. So I glued certain components down. Getting to your grenade section, which is arguably my favorite section of the hilt. So from this thin neck portion up here down to where the clamp starts is a World War I rifle grenade, which is badass. Holy shit, is that badass. I was confused for years as to why the Luke hilt and why certain hilts that had this ridging design were referred to as grenade sections. It wasn't until I saw Shamim's video where he explained that it was actually made from an old grenade. That is awesome. And it's heavy. I believe he now makes these, they used to be made out of steel. I believe he makes them out of iron now, since this is the most heavily rusted portion of the original prop. A lot of people like to rust the hell out of this. So I believe it's made out of iron now, or he's going to be making them out of iron. I'm not sure exactly what mine's made out of. It's made out of steel or iron, one of the two, but I think iron. To help with the oxidation process. I won't be adding additional weathering to this. This is going to go on a stand in a display case on a bookcase in my living room and look awesome and nice and have a little name plaque and stuff. I'm not going to add anything to it. But yeah, it's very easy to weather this, and it's wonderful. You get to this wind vane piece here. Mine's kind of pressure fit, so it's not going to jiggle around on the thread, but otherwise it's free moving on its thread, and it can screw up and screw down. It won't come off unless you take this emitter portion off, but it can move if you really want it to. And I like that wind vane. I like how this is all painted black to help with the weathering. I never liked the all brass portion on the As First Build By. And then you have a little bit of brass poking out there, which I love. And then you get to your emitter section, which, if I remember correctly, it's part of a balance pipe from a Rolls-Royce jet engine. That's awesome. All these vintage parts, minus the sync knob and the bubble strip, are pretty innovative. I want to know, because for Vader's and Luke's, they took a flash gun and just applied a D-ring, grips, and a bubble strip, and there's your lightsaber. Very easy. For Obi-Wan Kenobi's, they felt the need to Frankenstein this monstrosity. And I just want to know what the prop guy was thinking. What was he high on when he saw these pieces and said, you know what? Let's thread them on a rod and make a lightsaber. But it looks awesome. But with the emitter portion, this is another portion that you guys assemble yourself. It's the last piece you guys assemble yourself. The hilt comes with everything threaded on the rod except for the bubble strip, transistors, steering, and the outer ring of the balance pipe. So this inner darker ring is separate from the outer ring. Now with that, this outer ring is the only thing on the hilt that you can't pressure fit or screw on. You have to actually glue it down if you don't want it to move. It doesn't snap into anything or thread onto anything or pressure fit onto here. It's going to pop off. It won't pop off upward because it can't, but it'll pop downward and go crashing into your wind vane. So I just applied a very, very subtle amount of Gorilla Glue around the inner ring and just pressure fit up there and let it dry, and now it's not going anywhere, which is awesome. That jingling you hear is not from the saber, it's from my keys in my pocket. So those are all your components. So what do I think of the hill overall? And what do I have to say about it? First of all, gotta say what everyone else says. It's heavy. Heaviest hilt I've ever held. It's gotta be just under 3 pounds. It is ridiculously heavy. And that's because it's all steel and brass parts. It's incredibly heavy. I can just imagine poor Alec Guinness wearing this on his belt. The bruises he must have had from having this on his belt. I also want to talk about why this particular aesthetic appealed to me. Some people are very on the fence between do they want the A New Hope version or the Revenge of the Sith version. And there's one big thing about this that really appealed to me over the Revenge of the Sith. And that being the fact I spent 5 years in the United States Army. This has so many military components and this looks like something that the Army would issue me. And now that I'm holding it, it feels and looks and even smells like it has that old machine smell of something that I would get issued. And this is what they issue us. Military grade does not mean better. We get stuff that predates the Gulf War, that's beat up and rusted and dirty, and they give you this weapon that they want you to go shoot with, but clearly hasn't been cleaned in 10, 15 years. You bring it back and they're like, oh, nope, you got a little bit of rust there, clean it. This thing's covered in rust. This rust's been here 10 years. I can't get it off. Nope, it's not gonna pass inspection. You gotta clean it. This is what that reminds me of, and that aesthetic really appeals to me. And it's a familiar thing. This feels familiar. Out of all the lightsabers I've ever seen in person and ever held, this is the only one that feels like it could exist in our world. It's the only thing that doesn't really look alien to me. Even the Graflex flash gun is something that does exist in our world. It's a tool that exists dating back from the 30s. But even that, I mean, the flash gun itself has a very alien, otherworldly design. So I can see why they use that for Mark Hamill and David Prowse. But this, I don't know, it looks and feels familiar. And I think that's what's really appealing about this hilt, is that there's a familiarity with it. It's something that I would expect to find in a surplus store. And that comes from the fact that a large chunks of this are made out of military parts. These are parts of history. And there's just something very appealing about that. And very real. I strongly recommend that if you have the money to spare and you're looking for a shelf queen, that you get the static version of this kit. There's an installable version that Roman offers. You can even install this one with some heavy modification. But there's just something so real about having the static kit, knowing that this is 1-to-1 what Alec Guinness had on his belt. There's just something wonderful about that. Final thing I do want to talk about in regards to this hilt is I want to clear up an age-old myth. Numerous videos, from Josh to Shamim to numerous others, have mistakenly said, they've pretty much confused this for the V2, in the sense that they say the reason why Alec Guinness is just going, in A New Hope is because of how heavy the hilt is. He never dueled with this hilt. And if that's the excuse, then poor Mark Hamill must have some severe arthritis in his wrist from Return of the Jedi. But no, this is not the V2. And there are numerous pictures and close-ups and behind-the-scenes footage where you can clearly see that the prop Alec Guinness duels with, which is the V2, looks nothing like this. It doesn't have the little cubes. It doesn't have the wind vane portion. The emitter shroud is significantly smaller. This isn't ridged. It's smaller. This is the pommel smaller. There's holes drilled for the wire. The whole thing was modified to be more solid to allow the motor to spin the emitter to spin the blade. The V2 version of the hilt was made to accommodate that rotor. It was made to be smaller and lighter to be dueled with. The reason why David Prowse and Alec Guinness are going is because the blades were so incredibly fragile that they were pretty much told that they could tap the blades, but they couldn't make full contact. And I mean, that's part of the reason why David Prowse was replaced for the dueling scenes in the later films by the stunt coordinator, because he repeatedly broke the blades in A New Hope. That's one of two reasons. The other being they wanted someone with more experience to be more skillful in the duel against Mark Hamill. But no, the only time Alec Guinness has this prop in his possession when it's on his belt, when he first has it in his hands before he confronts Darth Vader, when it drops onto his robes after he's killed. All of the scenes with him with a blade actually in this is the V2. It's an entirely separate hilt. It's the only hilt from the original trilogy that's machined from scratch, with the exception of Luke's hero from Return of the Jedi. The V2 is the only machined from scratch prop in the original films, apart from the Return of the Jedi hero. And it was machined from scratch to accommodate the electronic stuff. Because the great thing about the Graflex flash guns and stuff, yes, they did have a modified Graflex for Mark Hamill. They had a couple different versions. But David Prowse and Mark Hamill, their lightsabers, the Graflexes, once you take the battery components out, they're hollow. You can put really whatever you want in them, which is what they did. They put their rotors and their blades that spun. But you couldn't do that with this prop because it's all threaded. There would be no feasible way to stick a rotor in this with a blade back then. Just no way. So I did want to clear that up because it bugs me when I hear people say that this is why he was just going, He didn't duel with this hilt, period. It's obvious in the behind-the-scenes photos. It's obvious in the movie itself. If you really pay attention on the Blu-ray, you can see that it's not the same hilt. I felt the need to clear that out because it bugs me now that I own the hilt. But yeah, I highly recommend it. This is a 10 out of 10. This is the be-all, end-all of lightsaber hilts out there, in my opinion, in terms of quality and accuracy. Regardless of the price, I can see why Ramon Gomez is still in business, because not only is his customer service great, but his products, he can afford to sell a $500 lightsaber because there's definitely a market for it, and I am thrilled to own one. That's really all I have to say about that. Once again, 10 out of 10 for quality and for customer service. I love it. I deeply look forward to in the future, when I have the money built up, to buy another Roman prop saber. I really am interested in his Darth Vader MPP flash gun replica, because it has the little lettering and stuff that you can't get from Court Banth or Saberforge. So I'm really excited for that when I can afford it. But yeah, that's all I have to say, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye.